understanding that self-care is not like there's one model to follow. So when I say putting self-care into your life, things like having time for yourself, one of the things that I like to do is every morning I start my day with God. Be open to hearing what people are saying to you about their own faith and their journey. Maybe that'll open you up to listening more. And then if you are a Christian and you are talking to other people, it's not about pushing it down, as they would say, shoving it down their throats about being a Christian. It's about lovingly guiding them to your experiences and how your relationship with God has changed your life.
This is the Fit Investor Podcast, where we talk about how to live a more holistic life of being fit not only financially, but physically and faithfully. We'll be joined by experts in all these areas to share their experiences and actionable and practical tips so that you can be a fit investor too. So now let's join our hosts, Cale Delaney and Brenna Carls.
All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of The Fit Investor. I'm your host, Cale Delaney. And today our special guest is Leslie Gaudet. And Leslie is a self-care strategist for female entrepreneurs. And as such, she specializes in systems that transform daily stress and constant overwhelm into clarity and calm, which we all can use some more of. She optimizes how to use your time, which is going to enhance your professional performance while also creating space for personal fulfillment, ensuring that you're present for life's important moments, both in business and beyond. And if you're leading a team, these strategies will foster a supportive and thriving environment, enhancing team productivity and well-being alongside your own. So we are excited to dive into this and explore the self-care strategies with Leslie. So welcome to the Fit Investor.
Thank you so much. I am really happy to be here.
Excellent. Leslie, why don't you take us back a little bit? I understand you started out in the corporate world and quickly realized that wasn't for you, as oftentimes happens to us, to those of us who end up becoming entrepreneurs. So why don't you take us back there a little bit and tell us about your story and what brought you to where you are now?
Sure. So I got into law pretty young. I actually, out of high school, I wanted to go straight into becoming a legal assistant back then. They called them legal secretaries. And I was quickly dissuaded from doing that from a friend of my mother's who was in that industry. She said, no, that you don't want to do that. So, and I didn't go to college right away. I actually decided to go straight into the workforce and started working just some typical corporate jobs, and found myself making my way back within just over a year from graduating from high school, working at a place where I was on switchboard. And I was one of the offices. Their phone was ringing the most, and I noticed that it was a law office. And so one day I just decided to walk down to the office and I asked the lawyer at the time, he's a real estate attorney. I asked him if he was looking for help, and he said he was. And so that's where I began. I actually really loved being in the industry for a very long time. It was really interesting. There was always something new to learn. But what I found was over the decades, because I've actually had my footprint still in this industry. It's been over 4 decades now. And I started to feel that my life was revolving around my job. As most people I talk to who are in a corporate job, it's usually now you work longer, you work harder. That it seems to be there's not as much quality of life focus. And even though they might say that there is that family first, they might say, yes, we know that family is important. Those are just words because they're not really followed by anything to suggest that they really truly believe it. And so what I found back in 2017, I was at a moment in my life where my husband and I were living in California at the time. And I had said to him one day that I really felt that my job was killing me, like literally killing me, because I'd been working long hours. I had a very long commute to work, to and from work every day, and I was bringing work home. And it was also affecting a relationship because I didn't really have a really great, thriving relationship because I was exhausted. I was extremely emotional. And so anytime I would have a conversation with him, it would always come from an emotional place. And I turned to him one day and I said, I don't feel good. I don't quite know what's wrong, but I know part of it has to do with the job that I'm doing. We need to make changes. So we had started talking. We had talked about Las Vegas before, and we revisited that conversation again. And so within a few months, we started planning for it. So this was the summer of 2017. We had talked about it. And by March of 2018, we took a drive. I'd taken a week vacation from work, and we took a drive to Las Vegas. It was really only, it was like a 4.5 hour drive from California, where I was living in San Diego, just outside of San Diego. And we drove there. We got ourselves a place to live. We found an apartment. We got a storage unit because we knew our things, not all our things would fit. And we worked with the person who rented the place to us to set up all our utilities, everything that we needed to be ready for 2 weeks. And then I went back to work the following Monday and went and gave them 2 weeks notice without having anything else in place except that I was doing something for me that I felt at the time it was the only move I could make to save my life because I really felt like I was headed towards a heart attack. And I truly mean that. And so in the process, I was discussing with the law firm, the managing partner. I said, I still want to support you, but I know that I can do that for you from a remote position. And so we proceeded to create this position that I have now as my own business owner. It was my first time into entrepreneurship, where I've been doing this now for over 6 years, where I support them Monday through Friday. I have a few hours each day that I'll give to them. And then what that did, which was really incredible for me, was opened up time. It opened up the ability to actually breathe, to not feel like my life was a slave to time, and that I was able to then go out and start meeting people, networking with different women's groups. I wanted to know more about what was out there, what was possible. And in the process, I was introduced to self-development and met a self-love coach and went through some of her workshops that she would do, in-person workshops, and then getting coached by her and realizing that the way I was healing, because I was healing a lot of trauma for myself, I was actually learning to love who I am and to be able to like heal some emotional wounds. And through that process, realizing that I really wanted to help other women to do this because I know that as women, a lot of the women that I've spoken with, that we usually tend to put other people's needs above our own. It's just part of who we are, nurturers. And I wanted to be able to show women that it's not selfish to want to take care of yourself, because what you do is when you take care of yourself the best you can, everyone around you will get that better version of you, including yourself. And the things that you do will get the better version of yourself. So that's like where I started. I don't know how much farther in you want me to go.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I want to dig into a few things that you went over there before we take it further. One of the things that you mentioned in the beginning, and just want to get your opinion on it on this in today's day and age, is you said you didn't go to college, you went straight into the workforce, and in the entrepreneurial community, it's always a big topic of discussion: is college worth it? And there's, of course, there's arguments for it and against it. Just curious from your perspective, what do you think about that now?
So I've worked with some really incredible people especially just in the law firm. I had someone who came in from the food industry who became my assistant for a couple of years. And she wanted to learn. And so she had that mindset. So she came from a completely different industry, but learned very quickly and was able to do an incredible job. So I had a great assistant for a couple of years while I was doing that. As for college, I think it's really about, for me, I think being curious about what it is that you want to do, having some kind of clarity on a purpose for your life, not just going to college for the sake of getting a degree, but what will that degree do for you? What will you do with that degree? How will it support you in your future endeavors. I would never say that education is a bad thing. I think being educated is important around specific, especially if you're going into some fields. Like I've talked to some psychiatrists of late, people who are taking deeper therapy courses. But I think it's really about if you go back to school or if you are going to college, I think it's really just being curious around what knowledge you're trying to gain and what that knowledge you can do with that knowledge to help other people. Because I think ultimately that's the purpose that we're put on this planet for. God, I believe, has a purpose for all of us. And I think from that perspective, that if we what we do with the education that we get, we have to have that clarity. What do we want to do with that? And what is that purpose? Yeah, I think I don't have anything negative to say about education. I just think it shouldn't just be for the sake of having a degree. It should be, what can I use it for? How can I help other people? Because that brings more joy anyways, more fulfillment to your life when you're using your gifts to help others.
Yeah, and I think you hit on it there is um, having the clarity, and I think that's one of the challenges for our youth when they're oftentimes pushed into college is it's just what's expected. And when you're 18, and I know for myself as well, you really don't know what you want to. It's rare that there's a person who really knows what they want to do, but most people don't at that age, and so you just go through the motions and try to figure it out as you go. And I've been a big proponent of more so, I think, like Europeans do it a lot more in taking that gap year after high school and traveling, exploring a little bit and trying to figure life out really for a little bit before taking that next step into college or whatever it may be. Because, yeah, I think we do need that time to get some clarity because otherwise you go through the motions and then before you know it, you graduated with a degree that you didn't like or is useless. So I think that's just one of the traps that people get into a lot is they just go into it without that clarity, like you mentioned.
Yeah, and I also think too as an adult, like especially someone who has had a lot of life experience, that I want to be able to support someone who is at that age where they're trying to make a decision to help them find that path,
Yeah.
to be able to make those decisions. Not telling them what to do, but helping them to figure that out for themselves and helping them to explore that. I think that's how parents can be really supportive of their kids is to really help them to figure out what they really truly want to do and not just throw them into school for the sake of getting a degree.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned in your experience in the corporate world, which I think is probably a common experience with a vast majority of people, in that, yeah, it really does become all consuming. And to some extent, I think it's designed to be that way because if you don't, if you're not given enough time to think about yourself, then you won't leave because you don't know what else you can do. So I think there is by design to keep you as busy and occupied as possible to keep you around. But, and the whole kind of talk is cheap, right? And I know I've experienced it as well. And you hear, yeah, the family first or this or that or the other thing. But then at the same time, you're oftentimes taught that you should bleed whatever the colors of that company are, right? That is your first priority. And if you aren't the person who works late and gets there early and puts in extra time and does all this extra stuff for the company, if you don't put the company first, then you're not the great employee. And so we get all that pressures when we're in that corporate environment to create our identity around that job title or that position or whatever it may be. And I know I hear that from people all the time, and that one of the biggest struggles they have when they do want to leave, even if they found something else that they want to pursue, is that their identity is so wrapped up in whatever that position or that role is that they've been doing, that it's a scary thing, right? Because like when you meet somebody, typically one of the first things that's asked is, "Hey, what do you do?" or "What do you do for work?" And you reply with whatever your title is, and when you lose that, it literally is losing your identity. And so that's one of the big struggles that I see out there. And I'm just curious, did you go through that? And do you see that now with the people that you're coaching as well?
So what I noticed in corporate America, especially before I stepped away from working for the law firm full time is and still today I talk with a lot of the younger paralegals there because I did move into that role. Eventually I became a paralegal. But what I found was in talking with them, they actually started feeling that it was less about them pursuing a career and more about wanting quality of life. I had one of the women who was the head paralegal of the team, I should say, that did the bulk of the pre-work, all of because I do the post-closing part. They would do the pre-closing and the closing of their transactions. And she was the head paralegal and had a baby. She got married and then they had a baby. And then when she came back within 4 months, she had decided that she wanted quality of life. She knew that the working for the company was meaning that she would have to sacrifice time away from her son. And those formative years, especially those first few months, he was only a year and a half. So for him to actually, he was at that time, he was only, I believe he was 6 months at that time, 6 months old. So now she's been gone a year, and now she's been gone a year, so he's a year and a half now, but he was 6 months old at the time, and she realized, "I'm gonna have to get someone else to come in to take care of my child." And that really wasn't what she wanted. She wanted to be able to spend time with him to know his mother in this time of his life, to really grow up through that time period. And so she realized that she wanted more quality of life, and she found a position that allowed her to be able to work mostly from home, which was ideally what she wanted. I know a lot of people, younger people, especially post-COVID, have realized that they want something more along the lines either fully remote or at least hybrid, because that gives them flexibility of their time and gives them more quality of life. They feel like they're not married to their job. So that's what I found there. What I found with the women that I've worked with is again, one of my clients was in South Africa. They're really all about status. So it's about, like, in the position that she was working, it's about the car you drive, the house you live in, how you wear your hair, the clothes you wear, the people. And working with her, I wanted her to be able to feel like you are just as worthy and deserving as any other person in that company to have joy, to live from a joyful place. And things don't make you a good person. And so I said, if you want to see change, you can be that change. So live as if the car you drive is enough, the house that you live in is enough, that the clothes you wear are enough, that how you wear your hair, how you are as a person is enough, is good enough because you are. You can change other people's perspectives by just modeling that behavior. And she started getting people to actually take notice just because she started just being herself and trusting that she is good enough. And I bring that God into it because for me, when I asked that question years ago, is this all there is to life? That was one of the questions why I wanted to step into entrepreneurship and really make changes. I actually was wondering, like, is this all there is? And am I not good enough for more? And I remember thinking, like, I am deserving, I am worthy. And I realized that really when I started leaning in more to my relationship with God, because he tells us that we are already worthy. For me, is I'm living and breathing, which means I'm worthy. I was chosen to be here. So that's how I look at it. And when I talk with people about that whole idea of like the worthiness or how people are expecting you to be married to the job. It's really about what do you really truly want and actually finding a way to make that happen. And because it's not your job to make someone in a company just change their mind, but you could do it by your actions and how you show up, being the best that you can at your job. Maybe that will start to make a change. And if not, then you can find something else that will.
Yeah, and So let's go down that road a little bit and on exploring your faith and how you integrate that into your business. Did you grow up Christian, or did you come to Christ later in life? Or tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I grew up in a single family home. My mom raised myself and my two younger brothers, and my older brother for some time part of his life. She was married before she got married and had three other children, but she was a single mom, and we lived in social housing. And my mom really couldn't afford to send us to like the paid camps, summer camps. So she would send us to the Salvation Army camps. And I didn't know any different. They were so much fun. Like I enjoyed myself. And I I loved the experience of through that experience, they brought faith into the activities that we would have. And so when I think I was around between 10 and 11 was the first time that I spoke the words, but I didn't really fully understand. I only know how I felt. It is probably one of the most incredible moments that I can still remember the actual feeling. Like I felt as if like the spirit entered my body. I can't explain it any other way. I just felt that deep, overwhelming sense of love. And then through my life, of course, I didn't grow up in a Christian home. My mom never went to church. We never really went to church. I did. I made for somehow it was just part of what I wanted to do. So I would go to Sunday school, and then I have memories of that. But as I got older, I really didn't walk a faith-based life until 1998 when I was 2 years married, and I met, a woman, at a job that I was working at, and she was going to a church here in South Florida, and she invited me to come for the Christmas, celebration, so I went, and, it was beautiful, and then the following year, I just kept listening, she just kept talking to me about it. Throughout my whole life, though, pretty much. I always would run into someone who would wanna talk about it, and I would say, "Sure, let's talk." I never turned anyone away, and I really am so grateful because I feel like he just kept coming after me and coming after me and bringing people into my life to come after me. And then when I met Suzanne, or Susan, I should say, Susan, her name was Susan Russo, and she brought me to the church one day, I believe it was in May of '99. And we were just listening. We listened to the service, and then at the end, they had an altar call. And I said, "What do I do?" And she said, "All you got to do is just get up there and walk up to them." I said, "Okay." So I went and I did. I was able to then rededicate my life because I understood, understanding now at an adult level. And then a month later, getting baptized. And it had been my goal to get baptized. I've been wanting to do that for a long time, but it just all lined up in 1999 when that happened. And I can't say it's been perfect from since then as far as, like, my walk really hasn't really been fully invested except and I think it started really in I had a pivotal moment back in the summer of 2021 where I was invited to speak at a summit for a faith-based summit, and I thought, "Okay, I can't just go in there and just talk." Because I'm talking to people of faith, and I want to be really respectful. And so I said, "I know I need to include you in my life." And I said, "I'm ready to do that now." So it's really been since the summer of 2021 where I really went all in.
Interesting. Very interesting. I always love hearing these stories because it's, hindsight is 2020. And when we, thankfully, by his grace, we finally come to Christ and surrender to him, oftentimes we can look back and see those seeds that were planted along the way. And you mentioned that you felt like he kept putting people in your path to eventually bring you to him. And I know it's, similar in my story and similar in a lot of people's story. And at the time, we usually don't recognize it, or we even may push back against it, depending on where we're at in our lives. But once we do finally come to that place and accepting Christ, it's always cool to look back and see, you can see those breadcrumbs that he was leaving, those seeds that he was planting in our lives that eventually did come to fruition. I always find it interesting and enjoy hearing that and people's testimonies. So thank you for sharing that. And so how then does this all interact with your work now, especially being that you focus on self-care with women and women entrepreneurs? And I know I had even mentioned this when we had corresponded initially about coming on, is that oftentimes in the self-care industry, it gets mixed into a lot of like new age spirituality. And so how do you incorporate your Christian faith into this? And how do you think that really ties in and makes what you do special?
That's a great question. And for me, it's really about knowing and recognizing that everything I have comes from God. And I talk openly about my relationship with people. And when I work with somebody, the women really that have been coming into my life, most of them have been faith based. I think it's really about being able to just talk about it enough times that even if someone doesn't have faith, that I can maybe plant that seed. Because I think God doesn't want us to just talk to people who have faith. He wants us to talk to people who need him. Yes, absolutely. It's great to work with people, Christian entrepreneurs, people who have faith in God and all of that. But if I find someone who I can work with that doesn't know Christ, of course, I'm always going to be open about my relationship, but maybe how I interact with them will help them to have more openness to maybe hearing more and planting that seed, because that was what happened really with myself when it comes to having that seed planted. Yes, when I was around 10 or 11, I said the words, not fully understanding. That seed was planted. Having all those people coming into my life along my life journey, uh, talking to me, having those conversations, those were part of the journey, planting the seed. And then finally meeting Susan and taking that final step to speaking the words to rededicate my life and to be baptized. Along the way, I did lose my path a little bit, but I always feel like God has never once left my side, has always been there. And even though I've gone through some really hard trials, I've noticed that every time I've looked to him for guidance, I get a way out. I get that answer. So if I work with someone, when I work with someone, especially if they have that faith, what's really great is that it's reminding them to trust in him, like to remind them that he's there for them to help them through it. I'm here as a guide, but I always ask, even for today, for the podcast, even, I always ask to help me find the words, help me to be able to show up that really will support and provide something really great and speak through me and help me to find those words. Because I know that anything that's come to me is through him. And through me, I want to be able to do really good things for other people. So I always ask for his guidance, and I'll always be open with people that I work with that this is who I am. And God is very much a big part of my life. And if they don't want to work with me, then there's nothing that I can do about that. But I'll always still show up and try to support, regardless if you have faith or not. And maybe I'll be that one to plant that little mustard seed. I don't know if that answered your question, but
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you tied into another thing that's important today as well, and which is being an ambassador for Christ in the marketplace, because that's another one of the societal pressures that's out there, is the secularization of everything. Okay. It's okay if you're a person of faith, but keep that to yourself, right? Don't mix that in with your business. And whether it's in the corporate world or in the entrepreneurial world, oftentimes we're still pressured that to keep your faith to yourself type thing, or leave your faith at the door. And I think it's because of that, it's even more important today for those of us who are Christians to be outspoken and be bold and be ambassadors in the marketplace for Christ, and not be ashamed to say that we are. and or afraid that maybe we will lose business or clients because we are. And it's something that I always keep in my mind because it is a scary thing. I always go back to the passage in scripture where it gives the example of it's people who come to Christ on judgment day and they say, Lord, we did all these things for you. We fed the poor. We did these things in your name. And Christ says, be gone. I don't know you. And
Mhm.
it's always one thing that really, honestly, it does scare me a little bit, which I think there's a healthiness and some fear and reverence for God in that. Is it enough to just say that we're a Christian, right? Is it enough to just go to church? Is it enough to just say you profess Christ as your Lord and Savior? Or do we have to really show that? And if we truly are his followers, if we truly aren't ashamed of him and we don't want him to be ashamed of us, then I think we need to more and more be bold and outspoken, especially in today's society and in the marketplace for our faith. And just want to get your thoughts on that and what your outlook is.
Yeah, absolutely. So the gift wasn't just made for you or for myself. It's made for everybody, regardless of whether you believe or not. If you believe, even if you don't believe in God, he believes in you. But if you don't take the gift that he's extending and saying, this is for you, like, unfortunately, there is going to become that day where they're going to say, he's going to ask them, they're going to ask him, saying, when did I see you wanting me to be clothed, to be fed, to be taken care of? And he's going to say, there's been many opportunities in front of you, but you just ignored them. Doing good works is not going to get you into eternity. And one of the things I often think about, like, how would I explain this to someone as far as why I believe? There's been so many things in my life that have happened to just prove, just so many things have happened in my life that I can't explain, that have happened in amazing, miraculous ways. But when someone says, if someone was to ask me, how can you believe that to be true, that
Mhm.
you're going to heaven? And I would say, here's the thing. And it's something I've thought of to say to someone that doesn't know the truth. And that would be, look at it this way. If you're right and you believe that when we die, we just go back into the earth and that's it, like we get buried and that's it, and there's nothing else, then you win and I win. I'm just going to say it that way.
Right.
However, if I am right and when we die, we stand before God and knows me by name because I'm his daughter now. And he says, come in. But to you, he says, I don't know you. And because I'm going to go to eternity and you're going to go to somewhere, it's not going to be pleasant. I don't know about you, but even if I wasn't a believer and someone said that to me, I
Okay.
think I would really want to say, you know what? I think I want to go for the gift because I don't want to risk that I'm wrong,
Mhm.
that we just go to the earth and that's it, nothing else happens. Because the latter part, the scary part, which
Right.
is, I know there's going to be, I know that they say there's going to be a lot of people really upset. I know it's going to be extremely painful to watch people go in a different direction than those of us who know where we're going. It's going to be an incredibly sad day, but it's the way I look at it is it's really our responsibility to share because he wants as many of us, it's our responsibility to share, to bring as many people with us as we can because the gift is not just for us alone. And the other part to that too is sacrifice that was made so that we could have this gift. I always look at it as we were bought back, like our debt was paid. We had a slave debt and it was paid for us and we are free now. And so to me, it's like our responsibility to help other people see that so that they can be freed as well. And it's not up for us to just get saved, to get baptized, to live a Christian life, to live a good Christian life and not share this gift with anyone else because to just sit around because it wasn't made for just that. We have been now commissioned to be able to expand the kingdom as best we can. So, with that being said, I've often been asking recently, even more, how can I really help to expand the kingdom of God through the work that I do?
Mhm.
And I don't know how that's going to play out. I'm still waiting to see, but I do know that it's still me continuously sharing about my faith and talking to the women that I work with about what I do and how spiritual, to me, spirituality is not, I know people talk about the universe. God is the universe, but they separated him from that. I think they're trying to make it a separate entity. But I want to be able to incorporate it more. So what does that look like? I don't yet know. Right now, I'm just really open about my faith, but I'm looking hopefully for him to guide me in some way to show me how can I really bring it more into mainstream and maybe how I market myself and some of those things. So I don't yet know. But
Mhm.
yeah, I really truly feel it's our responsibility, but in a good way. Don't you feel amazing that like when you leave this place where you're going, you don't even have to worry about it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I heard just on the radio this morning, I think they summed up a little bit of what you were saying, and that the pastor was saying, if we are me, myself, and I Christian, then the blessings stop at you, right? When God's intention is for the blessings to flow through you, right? And so, yeah, we get caught up in ourselves. That is where it stops, right? But that's not the grand commission, right? That's not the grand intention of God. The blessings are meant to flow through us, not stop at us. And being open to his direction, like you said, that's the mindset that we all have to have, that we all should have. But it's not easy, right? It's not often easy. We get still trapped and caught up in the things of this world, and whatever things we have going on in our own lives tend to draw our attention first and foremost, right? But we think back to when God was calling, as I always think it's a funny story, when God was calling, I believe it was Samuel, when he was young. Samuel was sleeping in the night, and then he hears a voice, and he doesn't believe it's God. He thinks it's the older priest. And so he goes to him, wakes him up, says, "Hey, what did you called me?" He said, "No, I didn't call you. Go back to bed." And then he hears it again, goes back to him, "Hey, you called me." "No, I didn't call you. Go back to bed." And then he hears it a third time, and finally he says, "Oh, that must be God." And his response is, "God, here I am." Right. And I strive for that, and I struggle with that in my life, of that being my response. Like when God calls, I want my response to be, "Here I am," not "What do you want?" kind of thing, right? Or what do I need to give up? What do I need to sacrifice? For being open, "Here I am, Lord. Here I am. What will you have me do for you?" That's one of the struggles I go through in my life. And one of the things I strive for is to have that open mindedness and say, "Yes, Lord, where are you going to lead me? How can I let my life serve you instead of me?" Right.
We're humans and we're selfish and we want to be safe. Like we want to keep
Yeah.
ourselves safe. Okay, tell me all the details first before I say yes. And I was reading, there's a book I'm reading, I forget the name of the author, but it's Money for the Prosperous Soul. And one of the stories he was talking about was a tightropist who did the walk across Niagara Falls. And he did one crossing and then he was going to cross again with the wheelbarrow. And he asked the reporter if he wanted to get in the wheelbarrow and have him push him across. And it was like, yeah, yeah, no. And I just realized that really that's what that is as a Christian. We're just saying, yes, if God was the tightropist pushing
Right.
us across Niagara Falls, yes, if he asks you to get on the wheelbarrow, you say yes, because you
Right.
have faith and you trust in him that he's going to keep you safe. But it's true. We're going to, as humans, we always ask, what are the details first before I say yes?
Right.
And Samuel was just like, yeah, here I am. Send me. I'm available. What do you need? I don't
Right.
even have to know. Just tell me what it is. And it's yeah, to have that amazing faith and trust. I'm always reminded, that is something that I'm always reminded, is to continuously keep putting my trust in God. Just keep putting my trust in him. He has my best interests at heart. But it's really super hard sometimes because the world gets in the way, things happen
Mhm.
and can scare you and think, oh, I need to take control of this. And it's no, just put your trust. You're on the right path. Don't worry.
Hey guys, it's Brenna Carl, CEO and co founder of The Mortgage Shop. When I'm not spending my time searching for the best pizza in town, working out, well, because of pizza, or fighting sharks, as Kale likes to say, I spend my time educating clients on the best investment products that will help them build generational wealth and making sure their loan process is as smooth as warm butter on a piece of toast. Call us today to get started with your investment journey at 800-816-7982 or, to talk more about pizza. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I want to, as we get towards the end here, I want to just ask you this, just because it's something that's been all over the headlines lately. And I want to hear from your perspective, being that you're a woman's self-care coach. But are you familiar with Harrison Butker and the speech that he gave recently at your graduation ceremony? Have you
No,
seen those?
I haven't seen it.
Real quickly, so he's Harrison Butker. He's the kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs football team. And he was giving a graduation speech to the graduating class at this women's Catholic college. And in his speech, he's Catholic. And in his speech, he was basically saying that to these women that the roles of motherhood and being a wife are not something to be looked down upon, that these are some things that should be, lifted up, and that oftentimes women can feel the most fulfilled when they are a mother, and that pursuing just a career may not be the most fulfilling thing. And reaffirming his faith and just the role that God gave for men and women. And it's caused like a whole media maelstrom, and he's been attacked from all these different people, all these different angles, for being a bigot, saying that women can't work, and just all these different types of things, which is not what he was saying. But so I'm just curious, from your perspective, one thing that I see is we used to have, in this country at least, there used to be more of a focus on traditional family values and traditional families. And as we've declined from that since really the 50s, 60s era, we've seen a lot of negative consequences, right? We've seen, kids are oftentimes growing up being led by YouTube and iPads and TikTok and Instagram, right? And we're seeing all this chaos and violence and mess with children. And I see it as a very direct result of the degradation of the traditional family. And so I'm just curious, from your perspective, and being that obviously you're a woman, but being that you work with women too, how you see that balance between obviously pursuing whatever your ambition may be as a woman and your career and all those things, but also pursuing that God-given role as well of being a mother. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so the way I would answer that question, because I'm going to actually go back and watch that because now I'm interested, I'm curious. But the way I'm looking at the traditional roles is that not everyone has to be a mother, or maybe not everyone is called to be a mother or a parent. However, I don't think I agree with you, just based on what you're telling me, that people are looking at, oh, you have to have it all. And I think that's what gets a lot of women really feeling like they're not worthy. Like they start feeling really bad about themselves. They start not liking their lives. And as you could be completely fulfilled as a mom, as a wife, you might even have a traditional corporate job, you love it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think what's happening is that because we have access to social media, or we have access to the internet, that people are being led to believe that you have to pursue something else to be good enough, be giving something back to the world, that you have to be seen as that you're participating in a way that's making great impact, but not realizing that participating as a parent and raising amazing children and having a healthy household where the relationships are nurtured could be your calling and is enough. And that's okay. But I think a lot of people think that, oh, they see all of these women that are going out and doing other things. I want to just really be clear. When I started, I wanted to step into entrepreneurship, not from this place of that I didn't want it just because of I didn't love my job, because I did love the work that I was doing. It was just that it wasn't fulfilling in a way that it was taking too much of my time and not allowing me to have quality of life all around. I didn't have a great relationship. So I think it's hard, I think, when someone says that, and especially if it's a male saying it, maybe women are not listening. They're not hearing that what he's trying to say. And again, as I said, I don't know the full context of the of his speech, and I'm going to go and listen to it. But I really feel that if his intentions probably were to say that what you choose to as your purpose, if you find your purpose is to be a mom and to raise amazing children and to do other things in the world that not necessarily are entrepreneurial, that's okay.
Right.
Like, you don't have to follow what everyone else is doing. We're individuals for a reason. We're made different. We all live maybe similar lifestyles, but we're different the way we think. We I just think it's incredible to be able to I'm not a mom. We didn't have children. We had decided not to. But a lot of my friends who have families, I watch their families grow, and it's so beautiful to watch. And I'm thinking, yes, that's amazing. That was what they wanted. They fulfilled that passion they had, that purpose. And that is okay. They didn't have to go out and start a business and to be seen like they're doing it all, like they're checking off all the boxes. I feel like it doesn't have to be this or that. It can be this and that. Like, you could be, maybe you are a mom and a husband who have beautiful children, and now you want to pursue something else. And it's in your it is something that for me, I think is divinely led. I think a lot of the time, especially if you are a spirit, you have a relationship with God and you have that conversation and he leads you into something, that's okay too. You can make changes in your life, but it doesn't have to be driven by what everyone else is doing. And I think that's what's happening is a lot of people get caught up in what they see on social media. Oh, look at this person, look at that person. They're making millions of dollars. And I like to say is don't look at what the picture is that you're seeing right now on social media unless unless that person is open to sharing some of their background. I like to share still when I go through things, so that it's having a real relationship. Obviously, it's not real because we're across from each other on a screen, but someone might be listening to my story and be like, oh yeah, that was me. And I'm saying this is what happened to me and this is how I got myself through it. And so I feel like there's just so much of people saying that you have to be this, you have to do that. And they're showing that they're standing in front of their Maserati and they're taking pictures in all of these different European locations. And that's great. That's great for them. But they're still a human being, and there still was a story that led up to that. And you don't know the truth behind everything. And so looking at everyone else as that gauge for like how or good enough or how good you are is not going to bring you joy. But looking at, okay, what do I want for my life? What would bring me joy, even if it doesn't fit the model of what everyone else is doing? And be okay with that, because you'll be chasing after something that you don't want, ultimately won't bring you joy if you're just going after what everyone else is saying to do. So I think that's what I'm thinking is probably what he was trying to say in his message was that, don't discount even being a father, parents to wonderful kids. That's a beautiful thing. And so if that brings you joy, or for women, if you want to be a mom and you want to be a stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home mom, or you want to be a mom who stays at home, who has a business that she runs from home, because that brings you joy. Do it because it brings you joy, not because everyone else is saying to do it. I think that's what he was trying to say, but people weren't hearing that. They were just hearing, oh, you have to go back to the 50s and 60s where women were in the kitchen, as they would say, barefoot and pregnant, and the men were out going to their jobs and coming home and expecting the dinner to be on the table. And that was it. I think that's what people are, unfortunately, they're not allowing themselves to, as I don't know if you know who Judge Judy is, but Judge Judy would say you were given two of these for a reason and one of these for a reason. In other words, 2 ears for a reason and 1 mouth for a reason. So you could listen more first. So,
Right.
yeah.
Said. I think that's very well put. So I appreciate that. As we wrap it up here, we like to just ask our guests to leave our audience with 3 actionable or practical tips based on what we've talked about today. So what would those be for you?
Yeah. So when it comes to self-care, one of the things I always like to say is making sure that, or I should say, understanding that self-care is not like there's one model to follow. So when I say putting self-care into your life, things like having time for yourself, one of the things that I like to do is every morning I start my day with God. So that's part of my self-care time. And also, I would say, especially finding that way to be curious. If you're not a Christian and you're listening to this, be open to hearing what people are saying to you about their own faith and their journey. Maybe that'll open you up to listening more. And then if you are a Christian and you are talking to other people, it's not about pushing it down, as they would say, shoving it down their throats about being a Christian. It's about lovingly guiding them to your experiences and how your relationship with God has changed your life. Another part too is with self-care, there's 3 things I always say to people that is really important to put into your life that will help you use your time more efficiently and feel really good about your day. And that's how you set up your calendar is going to really make a difference. So learning to say no to things that don't align with where you're at in your journey of your life right now. A lot of people have bigger goals, but they tend to look at their bigger goals as they're always looking at the bigger picture instead of dialing it back and saying, like, where am I at right now? I'm actually really into the 12-week year. I don't know if you've read the book, but I really love the whole idea around 12-week sprints. I think it's incredible to just keep your goals really close because pushed out goals, sometimes you can, if you don't meet a certain goal, you can say, oh, I still have a few months. I like the idea of bringing it closer in. So learning to say no allows you to say yes to things that really do align, and you'll put your more of your all into that to things that align with you than things that are filling your calendar. And secondly is asking for help is important. I used to look at it as a sign of weakness, but it really is a sign of strength because when you can ask other people for their perspective, for their input, not necessarily that you're asking for advice, but you're asking for support, that allows you to be open to a new perspective that you might not have thought of, and it could really help you. And then the third one, which I think is really important, especially as we live in an age where burnout seems to be the norm for our world, is really to learn to take breaks throughout your day. Because if you're always working and you're not allowing yourself to take breaks, even if you feel like you have all the energy in the world, trust me when I say this, it can and will catch up to you if you do not allow yourself to take those breaks because you continue at the same pace over and over and over again. It does catch up to you. And when it does catch up to you, especially if you get to one of the stages of burnout, I talk about 4 stages, but if you get to the either to onset of stress and burnout or chronic stress and burnout or crisis syndrome and burnout, those 2 stages are going to stop you in your tracks, especially the final stage, because you will not be able to do the things that you do normally. So allowing yourself to take those breaks helps you to step away from it all. And when I say take a break, I don't mean take your phone and get on social media away from everything. Give your brain a break, give your eyes a break, give yourself just that time away from consuming. And that allows you to come back to things better. And then I guess the last thing would be when you are looking for purpose, look for what don't look at the external because I think it's really super easy to see that there's so many amazing things going on because we have access to the internet. I didn't grow up with the internet. So now, and of course, now I have the internet, I can see all of the things that people are posting. But allow yourself to just say, like, to yourself, ask yourself, what is it I really want? If it's hard to start there, start with what I don't want. That's one of the easiest ways to do it because if you know what you don't want, that can help you flip it to saying, this is what I really want. How do I get there? And then from there, if you can't do it by yourself, then you can ask for help. And then from there, if you can't do it by yourself, then you can ask for help. And then from there, if you can't do it by yourself, then you can ask for help. And then from there, if you can't do it by yourself, then you can ask for help. And then from there, if you can't do it by yourself, then you can ask for help. And then from there, if you can't do it by yourself, then you can ask for help. And then from there, if you can't do it by yourself, then you can ask for help. And then from there, if you can't do it by yourself, then you can ask for help. And then from there, if you can't do it by yourself, then you can ask for help. And then from there, if you can't do it by yourself, then you can ask for help. And then from there, if you can't do it by yourself, then you can ask for help. And then from there, if you can't do it by yourself, then you can ask for help. And then from there, if you can't do it by yourself, then you can ask for help. And then from there, if you can't do it by yourself, then you can ask for help. And then from there, if you can't do it by yourself, then then you look for why I believe so much in coaches is find a coach or a mentor, somebody who can help you to start to get those steps into place to help you get those dreams that you want to fulfill. So I would definitely look at that. Those are my tips for the listeners today.
Excellent. Excellent. Oh, I appreciate that. And Leslie, if our listeners want to get in touch with you and learn more about your coaching and what you offer, what are the best ways?
Yeah, so you can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. So my name, Leslie Gaudet, which is spelled Leslie. And then my last name is Gaudet. But you can also visit my website at herextraordinarylifebydesign.co. And those are the places to find me.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much, Leslie, for sharing all your insights and wisdom. And it was a pleasure having you on.
Thank you, Cal. It was wonderful.
And ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned for another episode of The Fit Investor.